of the kingdom of God that we can pay attention to. The first is this: we're not going to be shaped by the kingdom of this world, by the values, the priorities, the principles of this world. We're going to be shaped by the kingdom of God. Take a look at this story. You've got two kingdoms at play here. You've got Caesar. Caesar just says the word, census, and everybody up and moves. Everybody obeys, because the Roman Empire was that powerful. It was an empire marked with military might, with wealth, power, influence, all those things. It's a powerful empire. And then you've got two teenagers, Mary, 13, 14 years old, Joseph probably a little older, but not much. You've got them traveling by foot 70 miles or so from their hometown to Bethlehem. And when they get there, no one pays them really any attention. Mary's pregnant, and still no one will even give her the time of day. No one will say, oh yeah, come in, we're crowded in here, we don't have much room, but we'll do what we can to make you feel welcome. Everybody looked at these two poor teenagers and said, we don't have room for you. You don't belong here. Until they ended up in a little barn or a stable or a cave out back with the animals and the straw and the dirty, messy, smelly place where Jesus is born. Two kingdoms. The one of this world, power, strength, might, money, everything, and the kingdom of God. Which one shapes you and me? There's a story I heard about, this was a guy, he lived in New York City back probably during the time of the Second World War. Went and he checked out a book from the library, and he began to read this book, and as he read the book, he noticed that, as he loved the book, he was getting into the book, but he also noticed that in the book were all these little handwritten notes in pencil in the margins. Little thoughts, little questions, little reflections. And as this guy began to read the book, he got just as engaged with the notes in the margin as he did with the text itself. These little handwritten notes, they challenged him. They gave him a lot to think about, and he began to sense that he had a kind of a kinship with whoever it was writing these notes. So he decided to track down who was writing these notes. And this was in the day where, computers weren't around yet, so you had in the back of each library book that little envelope where you could see the last person to check out the book. And sure enough, he found the name of a gal, and I don't know how he did it. He tracked her down, probably used the phone book, no internet or anything. He couldn't Google her or Facebook her. So he tracks her down through the phone book and begins to write letters to her, and they begin to correspond over a period of months. And the more they corresponded, the more he realized that he just had this connection with her. And you kind of see where this is going. So he writes a letter and says, I'd like to meet you. I think we have this connection. So she says, okay, meet me at Union Station downtown, or Grand Central Station, I guess it is in New York, at such and such a time and such a place. And he writes back and says, well, I don't know what you look like. How will I know it's you? And she responds, doesn't send a picture. She says instead, I'll be the gal that has a little red rose tucked in her lapel. So, okay, fine. He goes to this place, 12 o'clock noon, Grand Central Station. And sure enough, there's a gal standing there with a red rose tucked in her lapel, and his stomach kind of sinks because this was an older woman, kind of frumpy, not dressed real well, not super attractive, quite a bit older than he was. And he thought, oh, shoot. Here he'd hoped to find this gorgeous woman. But he thought to himself, you know what? We really had this connection. So at least, I'll take her out to dinner and we can have a friendship. So he walks up to this woman and says, hi, I'm whatever, John. And we agreed to meet, and how about I take you out to dinner? And the woman looks back at him and says, son, I have no idea who you are. But that gal over there told me to put this rose in my lapel and only tell you who she was if you asked me out for dinner. And I guess they lived happily ever after, right? Who knows? But you get the point. Here's someone at first challenged by worldly perception of beauty. And then all of a sudden, when that wasn't there, well, what do? Well, because he actually ended up looking on the inside, he worked out okay for him. And that's the message of Christmas. It's, do we look at the world the way God does? Are we impressed by the worldly values of power and wealth and beauty? Things that were so characteristic of the Roman Empire. Or are our hearts and our minds and our imaginations captured by the kingdom of God, the things that matter to Him? When you see that person standing on the street corner holding up a sign, for example, what do you see? Do you see someone made in the image of God? Someone that matters to God? Or do you just see another bum on the streets? When you see the person driving, brand new Mercedes or BMW or Porsche, are you impressed and wowed and you admire that person? While the person driving, the beat up old Chevette, you're not as impressed with? You get the idea. Does the kingdom of God shape your life? Or does the kingdom of this world shape your life? And the second is this. The second principle that will change your life from this story is humility. This story is all about the God of the universe, the one by whom, for whom, through whom, Him, everything was created. Everything that ever exists was created through Jesus Christ. You talk about a position of exaltation. And yet God comes down to us in a barn. It would be enough if God came down to us and lived in a palace. That would still be an incredible step of humility. But Jesus goes further and is born in a barn with animals and the smell and the stink of it all. That's humility. That's God coming down and lowering Himself. And so the question is, does that attitude mark the way we live? Are you the person in your office that's willing to do the jobs that no one else likes to do? Are you the kid at school that's willing to be friendly to the one that everyone else pokes fun of because they don't dress the right way and they don't talk and act the right way? Are you the person willing to serve the least of those among us in our community? The poor, the hungry, the homeless, those without families, those struggling with addiction. If you believe that the Christmas story really happened, that God really came down